Hi everyone, welcome back to Reading Corner. It's so good to have you here today. I hope that you're having a good day. I know I am, and I'm looking forward to reading some really lovely books with some great pictures. So I'm going to try and read a bit slower today so it gives you all time to have a good look at the pictures. First book is I Went Walking. Then there's a little bit of a mystery. We have to find out who sank the boat. And then a very clever dingo catches a wombat and he decides to make Wombat Stew. But he gets a lot of help from some unexpected friends and helpers. So we'll have to see what happens with that as well. So we're going to start with I Went Walking. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a black cat looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a brown horse looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a red cow looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a green duck looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a pink pig looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a yellow dog looking at me. I went walking. What did you see? I saw a lot of animals following me. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. And now we're going to have to discover who sank the boat. And there is the house and the boat at the end of the dock. And who's this coming up the footpath? Beside the sea, on Mr. Peffer's place, there lived a cow, a donkey, a sheep, a pig, and a tiny little mouse. They were good friends, and on one warm, sunny morning, for no particular reason, they decided to go for a row in the bay. Do you know who sank the boat? Was it the cow who almost fell in when she tilted the boat and made such a din? No, it wasn't the cow who almost fell in. Do you know who sank the boat? Was it the donkey who balanced her weight, who yelled, "I'll get in at the bow before it's too late"? No, it wasn't the donkey who balanced her weight. Do you know who sank the boat? Was it the pig, as fat as butter, who stepped in at the side and caused a great flutter? No, it wasn't the pig as fat as butter. Do you know who sank the boat? Was it the sheep who knew where to sit to level the boat so that she could knit? No, it wasn't the sheep who knew where to sit. Do you know who sank the boat? Was it the little mouse, the last to get in, who was lightest of all? Could it be him? You do know who sank the boat. The end. Goodness, tiny little mouse sank the boat after all those other big animals got in safely. So now we're going to read about what happens with the dingo when he tries to make wombat stew. One day on the banks of a billabong, a very clever dingo caught a wombat and decided to make wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy wombat stew. Platypus came ambling up the bank. "G'day, Dingo," he said, snapping his bill. "What is all the water for?" "I'm brewing up a gooey, chewy stew with that fat wombat," replied Dingo with a toothy grin. "If you ask me," said Platypus, "the best thing for a gooey stew is mud. Big blops of billabong mud." "Blops of mud?" Dingo laughed. "What a good idea. Righto, in they go." So Platypus scooped up big blops of mud with his tail and tipped them into the billy can. Around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang, "Wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy wombat stew." Waltzing out from the shade of the ironbarks came Emu. She arched her graceful neck over the brew. "Oh-ho, Dingo," she fluttered. "What have we here?" "Gooey, chewy wombat stew," boasted Dingo. "If only it were a bit more chewy," she sighed. "But don't worry, a few feathers will set it right." "Feathers?" Dingo smiled. "That would be chewy. Righto, in they go." So into the gooey brew, Emu dropped her finest feathers. Around and around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang, "Wombat stew, crunchy munchy for my lunchy wombat stew." Old blue-tongued lizard came sliding off his sun-soaked stone. "Silly Dingo," he hissed, "there are no flies in this stew. Can't be wombat stew without crunchy flies in it." And he stuck out his bright blue tongue. "There's a lot to be said for flies," agreed Dingo, rubbing his paws together. "Righto, in they go." So Lizard snapped 100 flies from the air with his long tongue and flipped them into the gooey, chewy stew. Around and around and around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang, "Wombat stew, crunchy munchy for my lunchy wombat stew." Up through the red dust popped Echidna. "Wait a bit, not so fast," he bristled, shaking the red dust from his quills. "Now, I've been listening to all this advice, and take it from me, For a munchy stew, you need slugs and bugs and creepy crawlies. Dingo wagged his tail. Why, I should have thought of that. Righto, in they go. So Echidna dug up all sorts of creepy crawlies and dropped them into the gooey, chewy, crunchy stew. The very clever Dingo stirred and stirred, all the while singing, Wombat stew, wombat stew, hot and spicy, oh so nicey, wombat stew. Just then, the sleepy-eyed koala climbed down the scribbly gum tree. Look here, he yawned. Any bush cook knows you can't make a spicy stew without gum nuts. Leave it to a koala to think of gum nuts, Dingo laughed and licked his whiskers. Righto, in they go. And into the gooey, chewy, crunchy, munchy stew, Koala shook lots and lots of gum nuts. Aha, cried Dingo. Now my stew is missing only one thing. What's that? Asked the animals. The fat wombat. Wait, stop. Hang on, Dingo. You can't put that wombat into the stew yet. Why not? You haven't tasted it. Righto, I'll taste it. And that very clever Dingo bent over the billy and took a great big slurp of stew. You've poisoned me, he howled. You all tricked me. And he dashed away deep into the bush, never again to sing Wombat stew, wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy, wombat stew. The end. So the animals tricked the Dingo and made a very gross stew, I think. I don't know if I'd like a stew with mud and feathers and flies in it. And they saved the wombat. I really hope that you enjoyed today's stories as much as I enjoy reading them for you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you again next time at Reading Corner. So bye for now, everyone.